Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Terry Parham, one of the founders of Innovative Wealth Building. Thank you for joining us. Sorry for the slight delay. Technology is a beautiful thing until it decides to stop working. So we appreciate you being here with us tonight. We've got something a little bit different. Today, we're going to talk about real estate investing. And this will be the first time we've done this specific type of topic. So I'm excited to see how it goes with you. And as always, whatever your questions are, the things that you want me to drill down into, feel free to talk to me, shoot me a message in the chat, and then we'll have a good time and we'll learn some things today. I'll probably learn some things from you, to be honest. So we'll have a good time today. As I mentioned, again, I'm Terry, one of the founders of Innovative Wealth Building. When I'm not helping clients, I am bouncing around the world. Some would say that I am a lifelong learning gypsy, as you can see from some of the letters behind my name, and fortunate enough during my time with IWB to be able to contribute to Yahoo Finance, MSN Money, Investment News, et cetera, et cetera. And we were planning to maybe have a different speaker for today, but we thought because of just the context of how important it is to integrate real estate investing into your overall financial plan, I got tapped to deliver today's presentation. If you don't know me, then you probably don't know that I do invest in real estate. At this point in my life, I think I've bought 7 or 8 homes at this point. I've disposed of some, I've kept others. I personally run multiple Airbnbs, and I'll be signing tomorrow for another one. And then within a week, we'll have that up and running and rented out. So before we dive in, I'm just showing you one of our newest Airbnbs. So once upon a time, I didn't want to get my hands dirty. I just wanted to hire someone to do it all. And that worked okay. But then for this Airbnb, I did every single piece myself. And as of now, it's booked all the way through November. Within the first week, we had 15 bookings in real money already starting to come in. So if Airbnb is something you're interested in and other types of real estate are things you're interested in, this has actually been something that myself, other colleagues, and clients have been working on. So I wanted to share some real world experience with you to maybe give you some tips, but then also to share some missteps with you that can help you get to success faster. I wanted to say this. So one of my Airbnbs has a 5.0 rating, a perfect score. We work really, really, really hard to try to make people happy. Our home in Hawaii recently got its first ever not perfect score, and it still hurts my heart. I wanted to just show you this because there's like a 99.9% chance if you do real estate long enough, you're not going to keep a 5.0. So I'm just going to tell you right now, it hurt a little bit when we dropped from a 5.0, but it's okay because the process is still there and it's still a good investment for us. So before we dive in, I'll just say the typical disclaimer. This is meant to be educational, maybe even a little bit entertaining. Do not consider this tax legal advice. You would want to chat with someone who knows your personal situation in order to get the best types of advice for your particular goals. Of course, IWB is licensed to work across the country and all over the place. And there won't be any product sales or anything like that. This is meant to be educational and to share with you some knowledge, some tips, some insights to help you on your quest with real estate if that's something that you do choose to pursue. So here is a quick rundown of what we're going to cover today. And I'm going to have to keep an eye on the box, the chat box, and then also just the participants to see if anyone else pops in. Um, so here's what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about core concepts and just first steps for new investors. We'll talk about strategies to build and scale your real estate portfolio. And then lastly, I'll just share with you some of the tools that I've used, tools that exist out there that I haven't used. There's so much information out there and some good tools. So I want to share those with you today, just so that you're able to answer questions, do analysis faster, and then ultimately get into the deals if that's what you want to do. So I'm going to pause there for a moment. If there's any specific questions you want to make sure I cover, please put it in the chat box. I'm going to keep an eye on it. And then, like I said earlier, I'm going to chat with you and then we're going to get through this together. All right. Okay, cool. So let's get rolling. So the first question that people should consider is why even consider investing in real estate? Sure, buying a primary home, that's one thing, but to go out and buy a secondary home or investment property or to just invest in real estate in any form or fashion, there's kind of have to be a reason for that. It typically breaks down to a few things. Maybe you're looking for cash flow. Maybe you're looking for appreciation, tax advantages, or leverage. Those are kind of the big four. If you don't mind typing in the chat box, would you share with me why you were interested in real estate? And if you had to only pick one, are you interested in the cash flow? Are you interested in the appreciation, which is the value of the home going from 100,000 to 200,000? Are you looking for tax deductions and tax breaks? Or do you just like the concept of making money by borrowing other people's money? So, just curious what you all are thinking. Okay, cash flow all day. I like that. Cash flow, cash. Man, we like cash in here. So yeah, real estate for a long time has been a way to make great cash flow. Unfortunately, if you're looking to get into real estate now, getting properties to cash flow is not as easy as it once was. That's because in a lot of places, home prices are pretty high following COVID, and then also interest rates are high. So what once upon a time could be an investment that cash flowed, now maybe it's breaking even or even going negative. And that's another factor for why housing prices are either stagnating or even going down in some markets. So, yeah, we all want cash flow. Keep in mind that the cash flow strategies that worked 5 or 10 years ago, maybe they don't work right now, but there's nothing new under the sun. So, there could be a swing to where those things will certainly work again. Building equity, absolutely. I like real estate because it's a self-liquidating debt. So, typically, when you buy something and you take a loan, you have to pay the debt. But with real estate, you buy the asset, it goes up in value. You let somebody else pay the loan that's due. Not a bad deal. Self-liquidating debt can be a pretty cool thing. So thank you for sharing. As we've already said, equity, income, appreciation, tax efficiency, these are big ways that real estate leads to wealth. And looks like I might be freezing. Okay, there we go. There was a survey done about all the millionaires in the United States. The thing they had in common, the way they became millionaires was through business ownership, through real estate, and through the stock market. So at IWV, we do the stock market part pretty well. But the real estate portion is important because a home is the biggest asset or one of the top three assets for most Americans. So again, that's why we're having this conversation today, because most of you don't want to go buy a bread route or, run a laundromat. Owning real estate can sometimes be a way to do some business in real estate in one, and then to also build wealth. So let's talk about some of the foundational things for new investors. One of the important things is just to make sure you're ready financially to invest. So, having a good credit score is good for investing in real estate. The better your score, the better the terms you'll get. When I say better terms, that means lower interest rates, lower down payments, less hoops to jump through. That's going to be super important. Your debt to income ratio is another important thing. If your debts versus your income is too high, it can be hard or impossible to sometimes get a loan. Emergency fund. Bad stuff is going to happen. So, since I've owned properties, we've had washing machines go out, dishwashers, garage doors. People got locked out. I had to pay 400 bucks in the middle of the night to get them back into the house. You have to buy furniture. Things get broken by the cleaners. Investing in real estate is fun, but there's often going to be things that require excess money. So you're going to want that emergency fund and maybe even a little extra wiggle room in your budget for those unexpected things. Lastly, you're going to need the money for a down payment. Now, On this screen, it says down payments can be as low as 3.5%. Probably not true unless you're buying something as a primary residence and then you're going to convert it to a rental property later. Does anyone know the typical amount of money you have to put down to buy a property? So, as a percentage, if you're going to go buy a real estate property in the Outer Banks or anywhere, what's that percentage that you usually have to put down? And it's close to the percentage you've probably heard for a primary home. But for a primary, it's negotiable. You can put down 3.5%, 5%. But for a rental property, this number is not really that negotiable. So I don't see anything in the chat box yet. The homes that I've bought, Florence is on the money, 20%. So 20% is the standard that you should be thinking of. If it's a $500,000 home, you got to have 100 grand ready to go. And that's just the down payment. In addition to down payment, there's closing cost, there's prepaids, there's maybe buying points to lower the interest rate. There's all these other things, appraisal, inspection, yada, yada, yada. So again, very important to realize the down payment is a starting point. And you can get some of those other costs covered, but you need a smart buying strategy. So you either have to be great at being a realtor or you got to know a great realtor. So that can make a lot of the difference again on if you're starting off with equity or starting off with an expense when you buy a property. So choosing your property. Most of us are familiar with single family homes. One unit, one family, one income stream. But you can do house hacking, you can buy a condo. There's all sorts of other ways that you can go about this. So if I could go back in time 10 years ago, instead of buying a single family home, I probably would have bought a fourplex, maybe four townhomes side by side by side. I could have put down barely any money, 5%. I could have lived in one unit, and then I could have rented out the other three units. After 6 months and a day or a year, up to you, you can move out of the fourplex, and now you own a fourplex that four people are likely paying more than the mortgage, and that's an asset that grows over time. It costs you nothing out of pocket. And to buy into the fourplex, you only had to put up maybe 5%. So again, if Terry could go back in time 20 years ago, or excuse me, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I was in school. 10 years ago, instead of a single family property, I probably would have bought a fourplex and I would probably still own that fourplex and it would be an amazing asset today. So for some of you on the line, you're probably not in a situation where you're going to want to move into a fourplex. Like me right now, maybe not a good deal. But for kids or grandkids, if you want to help them build wealth, maybe that's a hack that they can use. So I'm just sending something in the chat box really quick. There was a technical issue for someone, but this will be recorded, so just letting him know. So we call this house hacking. House hacking is when you buy a multi-family property and then you live in a portion of it and then you rent out the rest to cover the mortgage and maybe even get cash flow. So it could be buying a duplex, a triplex, a quad. When you go above a 4 unit, it's generally not like a personal residence anymore. It starts to become commercial. But that's a super easy way, especially if you're just getting started and you're flexible, to get four doors in the course of 1 year. That's going to end up being cash flow in the future. So condos, those can be really great because there's no maintenance outside, but you're maybe going to have HOAs and things to think of. And then short-term rentals, as I mentioned. Generally, short-term rentals are going to pay significantly more rent than a long-term rental. You have to make sure that you can occupy it though. Who cares if it pays triple if you can only get people to book it 20% of the time? So there's a lot of different types of property and there's a lot of different types of strategy. You just have to think through what makes sense for your situation, your reserves, your intent as you get started. Choosing the right market is very, very important. Once upon a time, not too long ago, no, this isn't a storybook, this is my real life. I lived in Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is super expensive, as you know, and investing in real estate there For me, that was not really a thing. I could not muster up enough courage or money to buy multiple properties there. It's also a place where landlords sometimes get the short end of the stick. So when you're buying a rental property, you want to know about the job and population growth. You want to know about the home price to rent ratio. You want to live somewhere probably where it's landlord friendly, meaning if someone doesn't pay, you can get them out versus having to fight with them for 6 months and losing all that rent. And then, of course, you want the right neighborhood. You want to have amenities, low crime, all of those things. So I've seen a lot of people have great success renting or investing throughout the country. Cleveland, Ohio, that was a place where people were doing a ton of investing because it was pretty inexpensive. But there's complexities there. You might be able to buy an old rundown house for 20,000, but you're going to be 100 to 200,000 into fixing it up to make it livable. So again, you don't want to just jump onto something. You got to do the numbers, you talk to the local pros, and really dive in deep to make sure that we measure a few times and then cut once to have a quality investment property. When you're analyzing a deal, we said cash flow earlier. That's probably the biggest metric that you should be thinking about. If I buy the property and the mortgage is 2,000 a month, I need to get more than 2,000 a month for this to make sense. And the way you back into the number is ask yourself, are there any taxes or fees you need to pay in addition to your mortgage if you're renting it out? Are you going to hire a property manager? Are you going to factor in vacancies and repairs? So when you back into the numbers, you can start to figure out how much do I need to get in rent, and then you can see if it's realistic for the property. So quick example, let's say you buy a property and the mortgage is $2,000 per month. And then let's say you want 30% margin. So, it's 2,000 a month, but you need an extra 30% in order to just make sure that everything is going to be covered. So it's that simple. You figure out what you owe, you kind of back into the number, and then you say, I need to be able to charge 2,600 a month or $3,000 a month. And if you can't get that type of rent, either long or short term, then maybe that's not the right deal. So cap rate is something that gets thrown around. It's basically your net operating income. So your income after some of your basic expenses, house cleaning, etc., divided by your purchase price. Um, the way that I think about real estate is I compare it to the stock market. If a rental property it has a 5% rate of return, maybe that's not worth it. If I could just go get 5% in the stock market without doing anything. But if the rental property has a 12% rate of return, then maybe that's pretty compelling. So, real estate, stock market, very different things. But the higher the potential rate of return on real estate, the more I like it as a complement to my portfolio in the stock market because we know the stock market goes up and down over time. Real estate is generally a little bit more steady because it's physical property. And as long as people inhabit Earth, they're going to need somewhere to live. And I like markets where people like to travel because I don't know, I travel a lot more as an adult than I did as a kid. I can only imagine how much my kids will travel when they're adults. So it seems like this travel economy is continuing to grow. So again, when you're analyzing the deal, you want to look at the individual deal, but also compare it to if I didn't do this, how would I do with my money in the bank? Or how would I do if I were to invest it in my portfolio? Just make sure you measure across different asset types so that you can find out what's the best bang for your buck with your level of risk sensitivity. So I mentioned earlier, it's all about your mortgage versus what you're going to receive. In this situation, a $200,000 property shows a $600 a month cash flow, and 7,000 a year, that's pretty good, especially if you bought this house and you didn't have to put down that much money. So let's give a real life example again. This $200,000 house, you probably put down $40,000 in order to purchase it. If you could buy it and immediately have a renter and make 7,200 a year, what I do is I take that 7,200 a year, divide it by my 40,000, that I put as a down payment, and that's an 18% return. That's pretty good. Now, again, we want to factor in occupancy depending on the type of rental that it is. We want to factor in maybe any taxes or repairs, but this is how you back into the numbers to find out if it's compelling. So for me, the sweet spot is probably 10% or above. If it's less than 10%, maybe I'm not interested. Depends. But if it's higher than that, I'm really interested. Again, you have to think about repairs and everything else. And there's a few tools I'll show you later that helps you get a realistic understanding of how much you may have to pay in taxes, fees, etc. I won't spend a ton of time on the financing options. Just know that when you buy homes, there's lots of options. I will, however, circle the option that I have used recently. So I've bought 3 homes in the last 6 months. All 3 of them, I have used a DSCR loan. Does anyone know what a DSCR loan is? And I will just tell you what it stands for, Debt Service Coverage Ratio. So has anyone ever used a DSCR, or do you know what it is or like why it exists? While we're thinking about that, I'm going to pick on hard money. Hard money is the equivalent in going into of going into like a shady restaurant and sitting at a booth and asking for $100,000 and promising to pay 15% until it's paid back. Hard money can be a little scary because the interest rates are typically 12, 15%. They're pretty high. And if you're not able to perform, then there's going to be an issue. So that's one of the riskiest types of investing you can do when you're using hard money. Doesn't look like I have any takers on DSCR. So again, a DSCR is a debt service coverage ratio loan. It's designed for real estate investing. The bottom line is if the rent you're going to receive is greater than the mortgage, then you're pretty much approved. You need to prove to the bank that you have cash in reserves. You have to prove to them that you have the down payment. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot of documentation. They don't need a tax return. They don't need a pay stub. They just need to know that you can afford the down payment. And then once you own the house, that the rent you receive is going to be enough to cover the mortgage. This is powerful because with standard type financing, there's a lot more requirements. They care about your debt to income ratio a lot more. Whereas for DSCR loans, it's pretty laissez-faire. It's not like financial crisis meltdown laissez-faire because, of course, again, you need the money and it has to cash flow. And they're going to hire a third-party appraiser and all that stuff to make sure it makes sense. But it's a pretty cool tool to be able to purchase multiple investment properties. And one of the beauties of owning investment properties is the interest is tax deductible. It's still interest, but at least it's tax deductible. There's also depreciation and all sorts of other things that are tax incentives. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. So again, I just wanted to call out that when you're buying a rental property, there's conventional, there's second home financing, there's investment property financing, there's DSCR, there's FHA, there's VA loans sometimes. There's a lot of things you could do. You've got to learn it yourself, or you got to make sure you work with really smart, well-read people to help guide you to make the right decisions. Or else you're going to overpay, maybe not get the best terms. And all these things are important to ensure that the real estate has the right return on investment for you. I talked earlier about just some of the hidden costs that you need to have funds for. I mentioned repairs. HVAC, that's a big one. That's, huge. Capital expenditures are just the basic things that are going to need to be repaired. Recently, with one of my properties, there were some blinds that got broken, somebody knocks over a glass. Those things can be pretty small, but every now and then you're going to have a big thing. So you want to make sure you understand the property status before you buy it. Property management. My slide says they charge 8 to 12%. That's maybe low. Again, it depends on if it's short term versus long term. Long term, I've seen people charge 15 or 20%, sometimes 25%. So if you're charging someone 4,000 a month, the property manager might be taking 1,000 and you only get 3,000. You've got to put that math into the equation to make sure it makes sense for you. Lastly, taxes, insurance, you got to pay those, of course. And then when you buy a property, I typically will earmark 2 to 5% of the purchase price for closing cost. Terry always negotiates for the seller to pay the closing costs or for me to get the maximum credits from them. So again, work with a really good realtor, and then you'll be able to do these things too to minimize your out of pocket and maximize your return on investment as you purchase real estate. Managing your property. Bottom line, you do it yourself, you hand it off to a property manager, or you do some combination. I kind of like managing the property, but it takes time and it takes effort. So, depending on your lifestyle and if you have the ability to be hands-on, this really goes into the calculus of if it's a good deal or not. If you're looking for really big tax benefits, you have to be actively involved. You have to be an active participant in the real estate activity. I personally am looking for tax breaks. To do so, I have to spend a certain amount of hours and I have to prove that I've dedicated more hours than any other individual in my property. So, again, depending on what your goal is, cash flow, tax incentives, equity, etc., that might also dictate the amount of hands-on work that you plan to do on your property to get started and then on an ongoing basis. So, there's a lot of things in life that are passive. Real estate, at least the way I've done it, is not passive. Terry's in there breaking stuff, putting it back together, painting, moving, flipping, hanging, decorating, cleaning. It can be quite a lot sometimes, but that's also why I like to buy properties near the beach so I can work 15 hours and then, go see the sunset and enjoy a little bit of the day too. I'll quickly touch on legal and tax things. Again, feel free to type a message in the chat if you have any questions. I always feel weird when I just like ramble for 20 minutes. It also makes me nervous and paranoid if the internet's not actually working and I'm just talking to myself. I'm gonna look at my phone to see if Carmen's texting me to say that I'm talking to myself. Nope, no message. So, so let's talk about liability. Having an LLC can be a good thing for real estate. That way, if someone slips and falls or something happens, they don't directly come and say, "Hey, Terry, I'm going to sue you." They say, "Hey, Terry, I'm going to try to sue TK LLC." Now, the important thing about an LLC is if you're the only employee, maybe it works to give you protection and to shield your personal assets, maybe it doesn't. From my experience, most people that have LLCs, they don't really uphold the LLC management to the highest letter of the law. So the more things you're not doing correctly with your LLC, the less it's going to protect you. Quick example, if you have an LLC, your LLC should have a bank account. All of the money should go in and out of the LLC's bank account. But if you have an LLC and it goes to your personal bank account, the LLC is not doing anything. You're doing it, so you have no protection. So there's other examples, but that's something super simple. Once you have an LLC, get an EIN number. It's free. Open a bank account tomorrow. It's also free, depending on the bank. So there are a bunch of ways that sound smart, but when executed incorrectly, maybe it doesn't give you the protection that you're hoping for. On the topic of LLCs, just by virtue of having an LLC, it does not do anything for you tax-wise. If you're the only member of an LLC, it's considered a disregarded entity, even if it's you and your spouse. It's the same as you being a sole proprietor from a tax perspective. So again, as you get into this, don't just use Chat University. It may make sense to, and I mean, nothing against ChatGPT. You just got to feed it the right data to give you the right answer. But it may be worth talking to a tax pro to ensure that things are going to work correctly. There's real estate CPAs out there, there's tax attorneys and real estate attorneys. There are some financial advisors or tax pros that do have specific real estate advice or knowledge. And then the last thing I wanted to mention on taxes, there's this cool thing you can do with real estate. So I'll just tell you what I'm going to do. So let's say I own a property for $500,000. Over time, you're going to depreciate that property. So over the course of 27 and a half years, you can depreciate, say, 100% of the property, not the land, but the property. So Terry depreciates $400,000. It saves him $160,000 in taxes. So basically, I win and the IRS loses $160,000. What happens? If you sell that property while you're living, the IRS recaptures the depreciation, and then I have to give the money to them. However, if Terry just holds the property until he dies, the 160,000 tax benefit that I received, it never gets paid back to the IRS. It disappears. My kids inherit the property and they owe nothing. So there's this thing called buy, and then you depreciate, 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 and then you die. And it's truly a way to save tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes and then never pay the piper. Part of that is knowing how a 1031 exchange works. Basically, you can exchange one rental property for the next, and there's no taxes due. You can buy a single family house, keep it for a while, flip it to a duplex, no tax. Keep that for a while, take the tax benefits, flip it to a fourplex, no tax. Keep it for a while, flip it to an eightplex, no tax. Flip it to a 16, 32, 64. You can run up this tax savings tab to millions of dollars, keep the property, leave it to your family at death, and the IRS doesn't get their tax money, and your kids or whoever you want inherits the property. So this isn't tax evasion. This is simply step up in basis and avoiding the recapture of depreciation from rental property. So again, it's an interesting thing. It's like real estate, mortgage stuff, it's like taxes, it's estate planning, it's all these things kind of wrapped into one. So you often will need a team of different types of individuals speaking the same language to help you get the best outcome because it's a pretty sweet deal. And that's how a lot of this wealth in America was created and continues to be passed on from generation to generation. Step up in basis and other perfectly legal things in the tax code that can work in your benefit. I feel like I went really deep there really fast. So let's talk about a buy box. Just gonna check in with you guys for a moment. Is everybody doing okay? Can you still hear me? Do I have broccoli in my teeth? How are we doing over there in TV land? Okay, Florence, thank you. I was getting nervous. I was about to go log on my iPad and see if I was live. So, okay, perfect. So, there was a question. So, if you wanted to find out how to do that, who would you approach first? Yeah, great question. A great person is potentially a realtor. Many of the realtors out there do real estate investing. The realtor I worked with here in Houston, she has like 40 doors. So if you have a trusted realtor, that's someone that could help. Talk to your financial advisor. They generally have a network of different people, realtors, investor, mortgage professionals. That's a great place to start. And then I'm going to show you some resources later. There's some great podcasts and other resources. There's a group called the Short Term Shop. I've talked to them before. There's all sorts of things. But if you have no other place to go, I would say shoot a message to your advisor and say, hey, where do you think I should get started? And can we first have a conversation to see if this even makes sense for me relative to my goals and what you know about my risk tolerance? Okay, yeah, absolutely. Airbnb can be a great thing, especially if you live somewhere where the World Cup is coming. Airbnb is even offering to pay new people that sign up to be host. I think it's like 500 bucks or 1,000 bucks or something like that, which is pretty slick. So yeah, it could be a great opportunity. So I'd say reach out to your advisor, see or if there's anyone in your existing network, and then we'll be able to help get you in the right direction because again, business, stock market, real estate, that's the big three ways that millionaires and multimillionaires are made. I wanted to talk really briefly about the buy box. I was going to just have this picture as a box, like a cardboard box. Um, Here's the bottom line. You need to know what you want to buy and why you want to buy it before it comes on the market. Because sometimes deals come on the market and the person that's the quickest gets it and they win. So recently I bought a property before it even hit the market because I've been doing this long enough to know the numbers. And when it came across my desk by not technically my desk, by text by my realtor in Florida, I said, yep, we'll buy it at this price if they accept. Off market deal, save some money, yada, yada, deal's done. So you really have to think in advance. What are the areas that you like? What's my strategy? Am I going to buy and hold? Am I going to buy it, renovate, refinance, rent it out? Is it going to be a short-term rental? Am I going to, there's all these things you want to figure out in advance. What's my price range? What's my target cash flow? Because when it comes on the market, there's people like me looking at Redfin, looking at HAR, looking at Zillow every single day. And your next best investment opportunity is 100 other people's next best investment opportunity. So if you can, you really want to pencil this in advance so that when the opportunity comes, you can strike. Now, there's a lot of research to do. I was talking with Oscar recently about real estate. And one of the things we were saying was sometimes it's hard to know when to buy. Because if you look at certain properties today, a year ago, they were worth $100,000 more. So you're like, what's the right price? My advice is figure out the price that works for you and then offer it to them. I'll tell you guys the truth. I sold my house in LA like $100,000 below what I wanted to sell it at. Part of the reason is because someone put in an offer and it was low and I said yes. I did negotiate back a little bit, but the other part is I'm smart enough to know, and I was smart enough to know back then, the housing market is not doing so hot. And there are people that need to get out. They're not going to tell you like I'm desperate on Redfin or Zillow, but there are people that really want to just be done. So sometimes you take a look at the comparable sales, you look at the trends, you love a house, but you don't love the price, put it in an offer. The worst they can say is no. Typically, they're going to counter offer. So, example, a house for 500,000, put in an offer at 425. They come back and say 475. You come back and say 450 with 5% seller concession, which, oh, by the way, is $22,000, 500 in your pocket. They say yes, you're functionally out the door at 422. Not a bad deal, or 427.5. Sorry, I'm bad at math. So again, this is all about the strategy. There's no harm in offering something low. If it works for you and the numbers, if you need those numbers, put out the offer. And if they say no, find another deal. But I try not to get in the habit of overpaying for properties if I don't have to. If there's a willingness and some wiggle room, you're never going to know unless you ask. So define that buy box, and then you have to be ready to strike. The only way to get lucky is for the opportunity to pass by and for you to be there laying in wait, ready to go at a moment's notice. To that effect, you do have to have cash available. Granted, you really only need a very small amount up front for earnest money, typically the first 2 to 3 days of putting in an offer that's accepted. But in addition to your emergency fund and your non-retirement accounts, maybe not a bad idea to have a line of credit available, especially if you're thinking about doing fix and flips or other types of things. Through Schwab, you're able to pull a line of credit from yourself. You can be your own bank. I'm doing that currently for a project, and I'm paying 7% interest while my portfolio is averaging more than 7%. So really, I'm getting paid to borrow my own money, which is kind of a cool deal versus me going to hard money and paying someone else 12%. So the big takeaway here is for your buy box, you want to decide that in advance so that when the opportunity comes around, you're ready. I was about to give one more analogy, but I'll just move on. It was going to be dumb. And once my wife heard that I said it online, she was going to probably kick me. So I'm going to just keep it moving. So again, here is an example of a potential buy box. It says the market, it says the price, and it says the type of home, and I'm looking for cash flow. Now, you want to get as specific as you can. When I'm looking at certain properties, I'm looking for a certain square footage. Maybe I'm looking for a two-car garage that I can then convert to interior space to increase the square footage and then to instantly have equity that I could then potentially pull out based off of knowing that I'm going to add square footage to the house and looking at the comps in the area. So maybe it's a 3 bed, 2 bath with the two-car garage on a 10,000 square foot lot that's within a certain neighborhood where I know there's a lot of gentrification going on. Again, the more specific you get, the quicker and more effectively you can move to make some of these things happen. So I'm laughing at Sharon. Thanks for that message. Maybe Sharon, I'll tell you offline what I was going to say about my buy box for dating and being ready when I had my chance with my now wife. So Again, when it comes to real estate, there's a lot of learning lessons. Year 1 to 3, maybe the gains aren't amazing. Maybe there's some bumps and bruises and things don't work perfectly. Focus on learning, not perfection. My first rental property, we had no idea what we were doing. We bought it because we liked the house. We renovated it, we decorated it. We wasted like 5 months and then we finally got it rented out and started making some money. This property that we're buying tomorrow, it will be rented by mid-May, if not before. We already have someone scheduled to take the photos. We already have pre-created this list of like 100 things coming from Amazon to decorate it and get everything up and running. I already have sourced local help to help with assembling furniture and doing some of the stuff that I don't have time to do. So as you've done this for a while, it's not always like a perfect match, but the trends are going to rhyme and you're going to be able to maneuver things to get stuff done quicker. And that ultimately just puts more money into your pocket. So it's about planning, speed, execution, precision, and these things you just learn over time. So I'm by no means this, super, super, super in-depth pro who's been doing this for 100 years. I've been doing it for a few years, and I don't like to make dumb mistakes too many times. So I'm trying to learn a little bit more every month, every year. And I do that by having a team. So I have several realtors in different areas that I like and work with and trust. I have several lenders that I can leverage, several CPAs, EAs, accountants, tax attorneys. I know contractors. I know a lot about that process now. And I even have property managers and handymen and all these different tradespeople because you're going to need them potentially at some point. So building out a team is phenomenal. And if you find a great realtor, they're going to already know a lot of these people. So when I need a cleaner, when I need someone to take photos, when I need someone to do X or Y or Z, I make one phone call, I shoot one text, I have a list of people. And if my person that I trust trusts them, I've got a good start. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. So building the team becomes super, super important. I think I'm gonna have to speed up just a little bit because this is 3 sections and I'm over talking through the first section. This is about going from one property to many properties. Maybe not the most relevant for the folks that are on the line today. I'll just tell you the truth about my investing. It kind of started, I don't want to say on accident, but there wasn't this huge, amazing plan. It was like, this seems great, let's do it. And then it's kind of developed from there to where now I'm starting to look at it and say, what's my 3 year goal? What's my 5 year goal? What's my 10-year goal? What's my 50-year goal? And again, I would always remind you to go back to that question. What are you doing it for? To build wealth? To get cash flow? Is that cash flow now? Is that cash flow later? Is it to leverage other people's money? Is it to do tax efficient things where you can save 50,000 in taxes year 1 or more? It is possible, by the way. So you got to keep the reason you're doing it in mind, and that helps you with the strategy. And if you're going to want to continue to scale. So let's quickly talk about scaling and strategy. Buy and hold is the most basic thing. You buy a place, you put a renter in it, you just hold it. Pretty simple. BRRRR is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. You basically buy a property for say 100,000, you spend 50,000 to make it better, it appraises for 250,000, you're able to go to the bank, pull out 40,000 so you get back almost all of your money, then you put a renter in it, it cash flows, and you are just able to create wealth without really putting in a whole lot. You maybe put $10,000 into the deal, and now you have this self-liquidating debt that's cash flowing. That's called the BRRRR method. Very popular, great method. Nowadays, a little harder than it used to be. Fix and flip, very simple. Same concept. You're going to buy a lower price property. You're going to improve it and add value, but then you're going to sell it. So down the street from me, you can buy a piece of land for $400,000. You can spend 600,000 to make a beautiful, huge Texas house. The houses around there sell for about 1.4 million. So if you do it correctly, you spend about a million, you sell it for a million 4, you pocket $300,000, you go do it again. Now there's a lot of nuance in there, and there's fees and unexpected things, and there's timing delays, and there's all of that. But that's basically what fix and flip is, either doing it on a small scale with inexpensive homes or you can do what we call luxury fix and flips, where again, you're taking a house from 900,000 to 2 million, and then you're going to make some big gross profit in the middle. So, and then there's also house hacking. We talked about this earlier. You buy a multifamily and you live in just one portion. Something that I might do someday, maybe, maybe not, find an old hotel with a gazillion rooms, renovate them all, turn them all into Airbnbs. I've seen this done. I stayed in one in Dallas. It was the craziest thing. And it was nice, you know, 40 units that are all the exact same, that are all charging somebody 200 bucks a night, close to the city. That could make you a gross of 1 million a year potentially if you have the money to do it. So there's a lot of ways to do it. Obviously, you don't have to do the big thing. I would start with the small things. But then that leads to your strategies for short term, for commercial, for wholesaling, for multifamily. I'm not going to go deep into wholesaling. The bottom line with wholesaling is you're looking to acquire a property for, let's just say, 100,000. And before you ever even close on it, you're going to try to sell it for 120,000, and then you're going to make the difference. So you get someone to offer you a house at 100,000, you find a different buyer at 120, you walk away with the 20,000 profit, they actually do the transaction and you're good. That's a real thing that happens every single day. There's even wholesaling groups on Facebook. So lots of ways to invest in real estate. If you want the super easy method, your financial advisor can recommend you a REIT, a real estate investment trust. You basically take your money, drop it in the fund, it pays dividends, and you passively can invest in either big real estate or even small real estate. So there's a lot of REITs out there, and you can access them through Schwab and other places. Turnkey properties are basically move-in ready. Maybe the tenant's already paying. You don't need a new tenant. You just buy the place, inherit the tenant, and maybe you're already good to go with little to no work. Syndications are basically a mutual fund for real estate, typically project-based things that aren't long-term. Most people don't have any business with a syndication unless you can get in on a small scale, which perhaps is like $25,000 to get in. But for some people, they don't want to start at 25,000. They want to start with 5,000 or 10,000. That's where something like a REIT could be an easy way to get into passive investing in real estate. Over time, if you have a process that works, you just rinse and repeat. I bought a beach house. It's doing phenomenally well. It's booked all the way till November. Rinse, repeat. Buy another beach house. That one's also doing really well. Rinse and repeat. Buy another beach house. I will tell you, there's something called concentration risk. If you own a bunch of beach houses in the same area and a common storm comes through and flattens all your beach houses, you're in trouble. Now, there is insurance, but you're still in trouble. So think of real estate like you think of your portfolio. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So you do want to consider diversification. And also just know that the rules change. Places pass new taxes, they pass new laws. They say you can't do that anymore. That happened in Hawaii in some places, probably everywhere in Hawaii. So again, there are definitely risk, and you want to think about how you can build and scale, but then also manage the risk associated with real estate. Some of the tools I use every day, Zillow, MLS, Redfin, PropStream, AppFolio, DealCheck, Rentometer, Price Labs, AirDNA. I'll give you a real life example. I might drive by a house and see that it's for sale. I'll see it, I'll look it up, and it'll say the mortgage is 2,000 a month. Great. I go to AirDNA and I say, if I short-term rental this house, how much would it make? AirDNA says 4,000 a month. Okay. So if I buy this, it's 2,000 a month. If I short-term rent it, it's 4,000 a month. I do my little calculus. I like it. I buy the house. So that's where these tools are effective. They can quickly help you pull real data from real rentals in an area. It can tell you the percentage of time they're rented out. It can tell you the money they're bringing in every year. It can show you how they're furnished. And then if you want the cheat code, just copy what the successful people do that with your home, and you're going to do great. That's what I did with my most recent home. My first home, I did not do that. We just made up a bunch of stuff. And we have to actually update those pictures because we painted the house since the pictures were even done. So lots of great tools out there. But again, AirDNA, Rentometer, Price Labs, those are some of the ones that you can use. And then once you have tenants, there's even digital platforms to help you manage tenants, doing background checks, collecting rent, service requests. Nowadays, there's a tool for everything. So you don't have to go reinvent the wheel or even start from scratch. There's a bunch of tools that you can plug into to make life a little bit easier. I mentioned risk management. Think about vacancies, repair, market shifts, legal changes, tenants messing up your stuff. You really want to screen people the best you can. For places like Airbnb, you do have some insurance they provide if bad things happen, and then you can also bill people after the fact. So we have some additional strategies that are a little bit more advanced. I'll go another maybe 5 minutes. I'm going to try to respect everyone's time. We started late because of a technical issue. So I'll roll another 5 minutes. And then, of course, if anyone has to jump off, this is recorded. So we will be able to get to the recording. But I'll just give it super short. If you're buying real estate and you qualify, there are ways where you can take huge tax deductions. Say, for example, you buy a property for $600,000. The land's worth 100,000, the home's worth 500,000. You do something called a cost segregation study, and it says that you can write off 30% of the home's value year one. If you're in the 40% tax bracket and you can write off $150,000, that saves you $60,000 in real taxes year one. Maybe that's compelling. Maybe that's a good reason to invest in real estate if you can meet the requirements to be able to take that tax deduction. Again, this is why people do real estate. Equity, cash flow, tax incentives, and to leverage other people's money. So there's a lot of nuance to it. But again, that's one of the reasons you've probably seen on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok people talking about buying real estate as a way to reduce a tax bill, especially for high income earners or higher net worth folks. Lots of free resources, Bigger Pockets. They have a podcast. I've listened to them a lot. Real Estate Rookie. There's a bazillion people on YouTube. There's a podcast called The Wealthy Way. And then, as I mentioned, I love the Zillow mortgage calculator. I probably use that thing a billion times because I'm always curious. Oh, that's a nice house. Pop it in. Oh, that's how much it costs per month. So if you've never used a mortgage tool, the Zillow mortgage calculator, just go and Google it. I use that one. I'm sure there's other great ones out there, but I've stuck with that for the last several years. As I said earlier, have that buy box. Know what you're looking for so that when the opportunity comes, you can strike quickly. I wouldn't get it pre-approved or pre-qualified with a loan broker or a mortgage person until you're ready to really buy. That might take a few days. So if you're seriously looking, maybe get pre-approved in advance. But just make sure you have a relationship so they can quickly get you a pre-approval letter or pre-qualification if you're ready to make a deal. And then again, run comps, run the numbers. If it doesn't pencil, maybe you should walk away. People will sometimes try to force a bad deal to work. And if you have the means to go negative for 3 years for the bigger win, then hey, more power to you. But not everybody has the means to go negative for 3 years. So you just got to know your situation and what you can absorb in the grand scheme of trying to build wealth in real estate. Stay small, stay consistent. Start small, not stay small. What? I can't read. Stay consistent and then just build it intentionally. Like anything else in life, having a plan can help you get there more efficiently and effectively. Whew, I said 5 minutes and we're right on. So that is all of the presentation for today. Again, the more complex things requires a little more nuance. And those are the things where if you're really serious and really interested, those are things we could talk about on the one-on-one basis. And that's when we possibly bring in an accountant or the other relevant parties to make sure that you've got all the information to make a good decision. So I'm going to say thank you for joining. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. If anyone wants the slides, please email your team at teamiwv.com, and then we can get you the slides. And then also, if you want the recording, we'll create a link and then we can send that to you as well. So your team at teamiwv.com is all that you need in order to request those things from us. And then I'm going to stick around for a second. If there's any questions, please let me know. But otherwise, thank you for joining. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to ramble a little bit and talk about real estate because I think real estate's really fun. And I hope that you do too. So you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks again. Have a great night. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.